Right, so here is the Daoist cosmology image. If you look up Tao cosmology on like Yandex, you can find a wait, looks like it's by Michael Wynn. Huh, interesting. Okay, anyway, and I just drawn this picture. It's a little sus, but it's a human. This is the head, right? This is like the eyes, the nose, and this is like kind of like the navel would be around here. So you kind of get the idea of the upper area here is the head. The five elements here is the like upper torso, and the lower torso is this what they call the 10,000 things, or like all things of the world, right? So the lower world is quite simply it's the world, the resources. It's the material world where animals, where you think like mineral, vegetable, and animals, right? So these three things, minerals, vegetables, and animals. In your body, it's the resources. So it's the intestines, the bowels, the bladder, the generative centers, etc. When you start an internal cultivation, let's just draw another person. Okay, there we go. You basically start at the lower dantian, right? So you fill this area up, and then when it's filled enough, so number one, you go here, you go downwards to the yin center, which is the inner generative center. So the inner generative center, right? You fill that up. That's like number two. Depending on your system, etc. If you focus on the root of the body, which is your butthole, I know, but it's true. That builds stability, right? So essentially, this whole area is like stability and resources. Resources, your money, your cash in the body. Next, I'll say just number three, you got to focus on the five elements, which pretty much it's like this. So you've got your heart here, you've got your lungs there, you've got your... When I went to say liver and stomach, I messed up the positioning, so I'll correct here. This is a front-facing person, which means that the stomach is towards the right direction here, and the liver is towards the left. Now, here we see it says early heaven or Tian, which is kind of relating to the sky. This is when the resources get spiritualized into, I guess you would say, like essences, maybe, depending on how you want to look at it, or vapors. I don't know, because this is like energy. So up here is energy. Excuse the bad writing. Woke up like an hour ago, so I'm a little bit, this, I don't know, you could say like air, or maybe, I mean, technically, I guess this is like essence and matter. Essences, it's water or liquids, right? And then matters. So it's like your earth, your water, your air, and your fire, if you want to think about it that way, So earth, water, air, fire. Okay? You need to build up the resources in your life and in your body, because if you don't and you go higher, you get really disconnected. It's like when people take psychedelics, or they have really intense experiences, or they do something really crazy, like they go and travel and they don't have the money and they do it on debt. Now they're in like a stress mode where the body just wants to go down. Okay? You don't want that. So you have to build up these areas, which is why, again, you focus on the bladder, then you focus on the inner generative center, the prostata womb, then you focus on your asshole. 1, 2, technically 3, I guess we'll just put that as 4. And you do that over the course of, like, could be months, could be years, it really depends. Depends when you get it. Your life will guide you. And then number 4 is you start to work with the organs, and we all have imbalances of one of the 5 organs, right? And of course, if you remember the triangle, fire, leads to earth, earth leads to metal, which is gold, gold leads to water. Don't worry that I'm drawing it in his head, that doesn't have any relation to... There we go. So you've got these, I actually like this a little bit better, because if we remember from here, Earth would, because you got to think like this is someone facing forward, so that's their left, this is the left side, we'll just left, right, okay? And then we think, fire up top as well, and then water's kind of at the bottom, like that. But technically metal's up here, so, whatever. And here as well, and water's also here as well. So you get to kind of work with it. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is like a more spiritual area, this area here. It's not super spiritual, it's not super quick. This is what they would call, I think they would call this chi, which is, is air, right? You think more air in its context. And so, but it organs, chi or organs. This is more, down the bottom is more body, because you got to train the physical body in this state as well. If you need to really, if your physical body is weak, you need to train it. You're in this lower area, let's just say level 1. Otherwise, if you need to train your personality, right, you're in level 2, and level 3 is mind. So they, this, Jing is like, essences, resources, all that kind of stuff, generative. And of course, this is Shen, which is nervous system and brain. So I want you to get that idea that, I don't know if you've ever read, like, excuse the 3D printing, but anyway, the comic I was talking about is Lian Qi Lianla, or Chi Refining for 3,000 Years. It actually has a anime for the first season, but I recommend checking out the comic if you like it. It talks about like divine and chi energy in this, and they talk about how people started like developing the chi level and doing all that kind of stuff, right? And then eventually they moved to what they call divine energy, which is nervous system energy, right? Or energy of the brain and nervous system. That the chi is, in this case, it's like energy of the upper organs and the air and the blood and the nutrition of the blood. So a lot of this works with, blood circulation and such, while this is more like raw root matters of like digestive waters and earth and all, and generative essence and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, the reason why we do level 2 development of the personality is that, and you could think like this is the soul, but it's in the context of the soul not being the center of sensory center. If you want to put spirit as a sensory center, you can do that, like body, soul, spirit. That's, you can kind of do these 3, right? Depends. I call the soul the actual head, but that's my... So maybe you could have spirit as this one. I don't know. It depends how you want to do it. The reason you do this is because if you don't work out your 5 elements, if you don't harmonize them, and the way you do that is by like focusing on them, and you want to heal the imbalances. So if you feel one that's really bad, you want to focus into that, and like day after day, it'll be a bit better and a bit better. And you'll notice your personality shift. For example, if you focus on Earth, here you will become more stubborn and like more of an asshole, but you will also become more like stable and have more boundaries, right? If you focus on the kidneys, you'll become more like internal and like mysterious and like hidden and secretive and all that stuff, which sometimes it's good, but you also become more wise and more like sensing all this kind of stuff. And then like fire is more like outgoing and energetic and you're fiery, right? Metal is more precise and focused and a bit more neurotic and a bit more like details orientated. And then wood is more like outgoing and adventurous and like a bit more up. You want to kind of, it can also be egotistical as well. Courageous is another one, courageous. So you have to kind of be careful about like wood and earth seem to be very dangerous. Like fire people are dangers to themselves. Water people are probably they hide away too much. Metal people are only a danger to their own nervous system and other people's. Probably, but earth and wood are very powerful personality traits. Anyway, that's what I found. So the reason you have to do this is because if you don't balance your 5 elements, personality, all that stuff, because then when you go to the next level, level 3, you will be attacked constantly by, what you think like demons, right, and bad spirits and all this stuff, which is like flashbacks, memory flashbacks, trauma. You'll constantly just bad memory, bad memory, bad memory, trauma, 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 trauma. That's what's happening when people shoot themselves up when they're in like a bad trip, right? Going up too high, and the rest of these things, because these things want energy, that the lower areas want energy. That's why if you can't like bust too often. If you're gonna have sex, you can't do that. Well, you can, but you have to like do it in a way where you don't bust, right? Which also means, so there's a lot of like health things you have to do to keep this area stable. People with bladder problems and like irritable bowel syndrome and like genital issues. That's why you can't be doing anything which harms the genitals, right? Like I'll just say it outright. People who have casual sex have diseases and issues with the genitals. If you do that stuff, your energy is going to go there, and then it's going to harm the bladder and the bowels. So basically, that's like one of the pitfalls of the lower body. Same way, they say like, oh, well, you can't be a glutton. It's because your intestines are gonna have issues. Of course, sometimes eating more fills this area, but if you overeat, then you just focus on this area, and the energy can't go up. So the reason the 7, what is it, like lust, wrath, greed, gluttony, all this stuff keeps you down is because it's related to all these different areas, and if you get what I mean, right? So anyway, if you clean these areas out enough and you fix them up and you have enough lower energy, then eventually, like it's like the rocket ship goes up to the head. And again, what is this? It is, you can think from the crown chakra, the top of the head, the brain, is the Wu-Ji, the unknowable. Like this is all, I guess technically this is all the Tao. You can think it's not just the top. We have the idea of like God just being the North Star, the top, and all that. But technically, it's everything, right? Everything and nothing, and beyond. If if you've thought about how the world exists and such, you'll get what I mean by that. It essentially forms into, again, the brain, like the center of sensory and all this stuff, and then it forms into like the yin yang, and the Tai Chi pole is the spine, right? Great pole, stability, neutral axis. It is the spine. Now the yin and yang, is that the parts of the brain? I don't know. I got to think about it. I assume, because I'm not at the upper level, but I've accessed it a bunch of times. Technically, we access all the levels throughout the day. It's just whether you can stay there is a different thing. It's a bit like, can you stay at a friend's house or something temporarily, but not forever? Essentially, this is just the ability of thought, of imagination, of creativity. That gives you infinity. That lets you do whatever you want, right? So, and it also lets you access the nervous system and reprogram the body essentially through thought and such. What else is there to say? I don't know. I'll tell you more once I hit it, but that's my experience. So 4, you fix that up, and then 5, you work with. I don't know if it's like a fusion of yin and yang or something within. Imagine you try to fuse the 2 parts of the brain. That's kind of what I'm getting, and then you fuse the whole thing energetically, of course. But infusing would be, it would also be working through traumas, healing those areas of the brain, because doing, as I said, people who give too much into their desires and all this kind of stuff, the energy comes from the top, right? It's, as we can see here, it comes from the source and goes down. It also comes from our mouth, when we eat and breathe and all that, and then it goes down into here, and then people overtake, then they over-exhaust this stuff. But I don't know. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask. But that's kind of just what I'm finding is how this works. Again, hopefully you understand it because I didn't. I just woke up pretty recently, so I sound like I'm a little bit, not in the not so clear. Yeah, just figure out what part of your life you're in, and then figure out like the meditations, and you'll just, if you just internally meditate and you work on these areas, you'll figure it out. It's really, it's like, are you in? Do you just need to hustle and grind and work on the body and money and all that, or are you in more of like an area where your personality and it's like getting in the way of you? So it's like self-destructive impulses, having to work with just like ego with things like weak ego, strong ego, or are you in the world where it's like your mind dictates reality, what you think is like where you are, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'll leave it with that.